So, the 4 kinds of mindfulness meditation, or the 4 applications of mindfulness, are fueled by something. They're not unfueled. What is the fuel for the 4 kinds of mindfulness meditation? You should say the 3 kinds of good conduct. If you want to have mindfulness, this is what you should do. And if you have very good conduct, you will have very strong mindfulness. This is the idea. If you have metta and you have compassion established in your mind, and you never get angry with anyone, you don't have any strong desires. If you have a lot of metta, you don't have strong desires either, because the metta is very satisfying in its own right. Why would you desire anything else? And so you have a very powerful mindfulness. So again, this shows you what we really have to do, what we have to focus on this path. The simple things, coming back to virtue, coming back to sila, is such an important part of this. And so that is what we kind of have to focus on. So, and then the mindfulness arises. The mindfulness also arises from something else on top of this, and that is right view. And this is what you find in the suttas. And this has to do with our sense of priorities, because our view gives rise to our values. So if you have a certain value in the world, what is it that you value? And if you value the spiritual path more, well, then that will be your priority. And then when you meditate, you will be able to watch the breath. But if you value the worldly things, if you value whatever it is in the world that you think about, then your mind will go there. We always go to the things that we value. That's where the mind goes. And so changing our values is very much what right view is about. Understanding the importance of the spiritual path, why this matters, why all the things of the world are not that interesting. They are impermanent. You can't hold on to them. They will cause you sorrow, lamentation, pain, grief, and despair down the track. Why? Because they are unreliable and impermanent. People will die. You will die. Things will go wrong again and again and again and again, and we never learn. That's the problem. So this is about right view. And then from that comes the interest in the spiritual path, our ability to prioritize the spiritual path over worldly things. So right view and 3 kinds of good conduct coming together. In fact, in the suttas, you have something called the Dasa Kusala Kamapata, the 10 wholesome ways of action. Dasa Kusala Kamapata, 10 wholesome ways of action, and which is a way of thinking about virtue. The wholesome ways of action, and they very interestingly include view. Straight view as one of them. And so what that means is that wholesomeness in the Dhamma. Sila is sometimes closely related to the idea of view. It's almost as if view is included here in the wholesome in that sense. And it's also almost a part of the mental good conduct, having right view. And so you can see how related these things often are to each other. Rewind. Rewinding. No, I won't be able to, unfortunately, rewind completely, because it doesn't work like that. So what I was saying is that there's something in the sutras called the 10 ways of wholesome action. Dasa Kusala Kamapata. You find that, for example, in Majjhima Nikaya 41, the Viranjaka Sutta, Majjhima Middle Length Sayings number 41. You find it there. And it shows the 10, it's a very fine division of virtue, if you like, the 10 wholesome ways of action. There is 3 wholesome ways by body, and then the converse 3 unwholesome ways, the 4 wholesome ways by speech, the 4 unwholesome ways by speech, and then the 3 wholesome ways by mind, and the 3 unwholesome ways of mind. And the 3 wholesome ways of mind is not to have any ill will, not to covet the property of other people, to desire the property of other people, and lastly is right view, or how does it go again now? Anyway, an undistorted view is the word. Viparita dasana or something like that, an undistorted view. And that undistorted view is basically the view that, there is something given, there are fruits and results of good and bad actions, there is mother and father, all of these things we're discussing just the other day here are part of that. So check out Majjhima Nikaya 41, it's a nice sutta, Viranjaka Sutta. Okay. So let's carry on. So the three kinds of good conduct are the fuel for mindfulness and the applications of mindfulness. And then what is the fuel for the three kinds of good conduct? And of course it is going to be sense restraint, because now we're just doing the reverse of what we had before. Why is that? Because sense restraint makes the mind even. It doesn't really allow the desire and ill will to arise in the mind. And when the desire and ill will do not arise in the mind, well then all three kinds of good conduct tend to be fulfilled because of that. If the mind is under control, then everything is under control. The fuel for sense restraint is going to be mindfulness and situational awareness. When you have mindfulness and situational awareness, you know the situation you are in and you make sure you are in the right kind of situations, then the senses are possible to restrain. If you don't do that, it becomes very hard to restrain the senses. So it relies on you being wise about what you are doing in your life. This is much more easy to do if you are a monastic. Even then it can be hard, more difficult in lay life because of all the busyness and the family and work and whatnot that you have to kind of do. Monastic life is fewer duties, which makes these things easier. And so that's important to keep in mind that these are very lofty things, and some of them may feel that they are a little bit out of reach, and so you do it partially at least. You do it to your best of your ability. That's kind of the idea here. Then we have, I say mindfulness and situational awareness is fueled by something, is not unfueled. And what is the fuel for mindfulness and situational awareness? You should say wise attention. Rational application of the mind, wise attention. If you have wise attention, then that fulfills all of the other ones. What is that wise attention? It is any time you attend and your good qualities go up, that's wise attention. Anytime you attend, your bad qualities are reduced, that's wise attention. If your good qualities are going down, that's unwise attention. If your bad qualities are going up, you're becoming more angry, more desirous, more stupid, then it's unwise attention. So this is how you know. It's defined according to its result. So many things in the Dhamma are defined according to the result, what it does. So you can think right now, okay, if you think like compassion to everyone here, see what happens in your mind. Okay. Good qualities going up, anyway, you get the idea, You can kind of, you feel it, you feel these things. So what is then the fuel for the wise attention? And we know already it's faith or confidence. Again, I prefer confidence. So when you have confidence in the teaching of the Buddha tells you this is how you attend wisely, and so you follow along. And that is how you get wise attention from confidence. The fuel for confidence is listening to true teachings. When you hear the Dhamma, it's like, what? This is just so true. I've been waiting for these teachings my entire life, and here finally I come across these teachings. For some people it's like that. It's like, what? This is just amazing. How the Buddha just kind of had no idea such a person even existed. And now, here they are, here are these teachings coming down to us from 2,500 years ago, still kept alive over 2,500 years. Wow, this is true. You listen to the teaching, you recognize at least some of it in your life. If you attend unwisely, then you get more angry. We all know exactly how that works. And if you attend wisely, then you feel more compassion. We also know how that works. It's kind of obvious once the Buddha points it out. But sometimes we cannot understand the obvious until a wise person points it out. That's just kind of the weird thing sometimes. So it's like, wow, you read the suttas and you think, yes, there's something here, something extraordinary here. I don't know about how you feel when I read out these suttas like this, but doesn't it kind of make sense? Yeah, it's like, of course it has to be like this. Yeah, it's kind of, it's not kind of weird. It's not some kind of ancient thing that they could only understand 2,500 years ago with some weird ideas and kind of burning some strange thing, and the smoke goes to heaven, and then you get reborn through the clouds or anything, which is kind of a bit like the Vedas. I like. It's kind of really weird stuff. And a lot of these ancient texts are really weird. It's really hard to make sense of them. Yeah, it's all metaphors and similes and parables, and then someone has to explain to you what they mean, all of these kind of things. Whereas the Dhamma is kind of quite straightforward. It's like a human being talking to another human being. There's something really special about the Dhamma, really special about these texts, that you don't really, very hard to come by almost anywhere else in human society. I mean, of course, I am very biased, but that's how it feels to me. Yeah, it feels really something really unique going on here. And of course, the way you get to listen to these true teachings is by hanging out with the true people, the true persons, the Sappurisa Sangseva. Hanging out with superior people. Sappurisa also called superior people. So that is, and sometimes I like the idea of hanging out with. Associating is formal. It's kind of formal. But hanging out is kind of more relaxed. Yeah, so it's okay. It makes sense. And hanging out has this idea of casual, being more casual. Associating with sounds a bit okay. I associate with these people. It sounds a bit kind of formal. Whereas hanging out was like, okay, whatever. You're kind of hanging out on the corner or something. Yeah. What was that? Where, it doesn't matter so much where it is. Not in the bars, of course. But the idea of hanging out is that you are relaxed. Yeah, you are kind of, you're just together with somebody. You don't necessarily have a formal conversation or formal discussion or anything like that. You're just there with someone. And it's a bit like sometimes I like to hang out with Ajahn Brahm. Yeah, it doesn't, I don't associate. It sounds way too formal. Yeah, so Ajahn Brahm is already there having a cup of tea, and then I go up and just kind of sit down next to him. Don't say anything necessarily. You just hang out with Ajahn Brahm. Yeah, this, to me, hang out kind of works really well. And so you sit back, and Ajahn Brahm maybe says something silly. He likes to say silly things. And then everyone has a laugh, you have a good time, and then you kind of feel much lighter, and you go back to your kuti again afterwards. That's kind of hanging out, yeah. So anyway, this is just alternative ways. It's not that hanging out is better. Probably associating is better because it's a more appropriate word, but it gives you a broader spectrum, broader idea of why this is nice. So associating with superior people. These are the areas. Number one area, of course, the Buddha. And so what this is saying is that if you want to become enlightened, if you want vidya and vimutti, understanding and liberation and freedom, hang out with those good people. And that is the core thing that makes this work. So hang out more with such people. That's basically the idea here. And the more you hang out with such people, the more it leads in the right direction. This is kind of how this works. And that's really nice, isn't it? It's a beautiful message. Stay with those Aryans, stay with those noble ones, be with those people who are really nice to be with anyway. You would still want to be with these people anyway because they are gentle, they are kind, they treat you well, they never say bad things to you. They, when you're with them, you feel peaceful, you feel soft because you're with these people, and so they make you feel good. And on top of that, they make you wise, and they lead you to enlightenment. What's not to like? Yeah, it's like everything kind of coming together in these people. And so that is kind of why this is so powerful. So let's have again a look at the simile of the rain on the mountaintop, because this is one of my favorite similes to kind of show you how this works. But before that, let's go through the rest of how this is presented. In this way, when the factor of associating with true persons is fulfilled, it fulfills the factor of listening to the true teaching. When the factor of listening to the true teaching is fulfilled, it fulfills the factor of confidence. which fulfills the factor of wise attention, which fulfills the factor of mindfulness and situational awareness, which fulfills sense restraint, which fulfills the 3 kinds of good conduct, which fulfills the 4 kinds of application of mindfulness, which fulfills the 7 awakening factors. And when the 7 awakening factors are fulfilled, they fulfill knowledge and freedom. That's the fuel for knowledge or understanding and freedom. That is how it is fulfilled. This is great, isn't it? All you have to do is fulfill each one, but you have to remember to fulfill it. Yeah, it doesn't mean just hanging out a little bit. It means really doing the work. You have to fulfill associating with true persons. In other words, you have to do it again and again and again. You have to read the same sutta again and again and again. And that's why I teach the same sutta every time I come to KL. Again and again and again and again. And next year when I come, I'm going to teach it again. And the year after that. And so until I die, and then someone else will teach it again. And the point is that it's like a kind of osmosis. You hang out with the right kind of teachers, you hang out with the Buddha, and it's like it seeps into you. Yeah, you can feel the Buddha's almost like you can feel the Buddha's vibe sometimes. Yeah, and when you feel the vibe of the Buddha, you listen carefully. It goes in a little bit deeper every time, deeper and deeper and deeper. You are fulfilling the factor of associating with these good people. That's what you're doing. You listen to it again. Then you consider carefully what it is that the Buddha is saying. You reflect on it. And as you reflect on it, you are then fulfilling the listening to the true teaching. And then you go back again to the true person. And then this whole thing starts to roll on. And for each a level you move on, you go on to confidence, you go on to faith or whatever. Then when the faith grows, then when you go back to the teacher again, your teacher feels different at that time because your faith has changed. It's like I have lived now with Ajahn Brahm for 30 years. And initially I was really dismissive of Ajahn Brahm. Yeah, whatever. I didn't really believe everything. What it is like sometimes. But it's kind of strange. Even after 30 years, I feel more sense of appreciation for Ajahn Brahm than kind of ever. Because you grow in the Dhamma. And when you grow in the Dhamma, you understand more what is going on. So each time you go further down these factors, you start really purifying your virtue in a deep way by having more metta and karuna. Then when you go back to this teacher, your kalyana mitta, the sappurisa, you appreciate them much more. And because you appreciate them much more, the Dhamma goes in an even deeper way. And then the path rolls on like this. You redo the factors, you think about it again. And this is why I personally find it very fulfilling to read the same suttas every time. Yeah, because actually every time it's different. Every time it opens up new doors. Anyway, you forget what happened last year, so you need to be reminded anyway. Yeah, that's the way I am anyway. So it kind of carries on like this. Each one fulfilling the previous one. But it has to be fulfilled, yeah? The critical word here is fulfilling. It is not a simple thing. It's not like a one-off, anything like that. And then we come to the nice simile again, which kind of shows you how this works. It's when the heavens rain heavenly on the mountaintop, and the water flows downhill to fill the hollows, crevices, and creeks. As they become full, they fill up the pools. The pools fill up the lakes fill up the streams, and the streams fill up the rivers. And as the rivers become full, they fill up the ocean. That's the fuel for the ocean, and that's how it is filled up. How does the ocean get filled up? Because of the rain on the mountaintop. That's why it gets filled up. Yeah, it is not for any other reason. And that rain on the mountaintop, well, that is the seeing the sappurisa. This is how having the kalyana is hanging out with the Buddha. And if you keep on raining on that mountaintop, then stage by stage, each kind of station, each kind of water body will fill up as a consequence of that. Filling up, filling up, filling up, until eventually it reaches the ocean. All that it has to do is continue the rain on the mountaintop. That is all that is required. If you stop the rain on the mountaintop, the ocean will not fill up. But if you keep it going, then it will eventually fill up. So if you keep on coming back to these teachings, if you keep on filling up that part of it, coming back to the Buddha, reflecting on these teachings, building it up over time, then eventually you also will have, each one of us will go to the goal of this path, finding the highest kind of liberation, finding the highest kind of happiness, ending all suffering, having no more defilements of the mind, no more anger, no more stupidity, bliss, brightness, peace, liberation, all the best things you could ever want for yourself are there for the taking if you keep on reigning on that mountaintop. Okay, let's take a 5-minute break and then we carry on.
Ajahn, since associating with the Sappurisa seems to be so key, I'm not sure whether Buddha in any suttas have mentioned that it's also a skill to associate with, to look out for, or to associate with Sappurisa. Did he teach that as a skill?
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, thank you for that point. That's a very, very good point, actually. And the skill, there's a couple of different skills. One of the skills is to recognize who is a Sappurisa, because it can be hard to recognize. And you have to be quite wise yourself to be able to see who really is a Sappurisa. And what you should look for are basically things like the qualities of the person. Do they have defilements? Do they get angry? Are they greedy? Are they confused? These kind of things. Or do they have the opposite? Are they kind? Are they generous? Do they have all the opposite qualities? So this is the first thing to look for. And that can give you an idea. It's not 100% accurate, because some people, they may have the act together very well. They may look like Sappurisa, but actually they're not. They just are very inspiring in other ways. And so it's not 100% accurate, but if someone gets angry, well, then there's good reasons for doubt. If they are greedy, there's good reasons for doubt. Yeah, that's so it's an approximate. Another thing that the Buddha talks about is that if someone gets famous, do they still have the same integrity? Do they still have the same morality, even though they get famous? Some people get corrupted by fame, or by too much honor, these kind of things. So is the person getting corrupted or not? This is another way of looking at these things. So the sutta to look at is called the Vimangsaka Sutta, Majjhima Nikaya 47, middle-length saying number 47, which is an inquiry into people, how to know whether the Buddha really is the Buddha or not. And this same method is also found elsewhere in the suttas, like in the Chunky Sutta, Majjhima Nikaya 95, you also find a similar kind of idea, how to look out for the qualities, whether someone is an Arya, noble person or not. So that is the beginning point. So how to know? The second question is then about how are you around people who are noble? How should you treat them? So if you are lucky enough to come across someone who has the right qualities, then what do you do? And the answer is you treat them well. You treat them well. You treat them with kindness. You don't argue unnecessarily. You don't do things that are that kind of create that are not nice in a sense. And by treating them well, they will tend to treat you well in return. This is kind of how it goes. There's an interesting passage somewhere in the suttas where the Buddha says, well, if you are kind and compassionate to the arahants, the arahants will be kind and compassionate to you in return. This is because this is just human reciprocity. You treat people well. And so that is how you maximize your access to to those noble ones, because you treat them well. That doesn't mean you should become completely obedient. That doesn't mean you should never argue, you should never disagree. In fact, a real arahant will appreciate it if you ask real questions. If they cannot take the fact that you ask real questions, then maybe that's because they're not an arahant. Yeah, so that's part of it. You can, that's also like a little bit of a test, if you like. And when I think about my life with people, I always like to challenge people a little bit who I think are kind of arahants, and then I also see how they react and see what they say. Not in a nasty way, but at least a little bit. To see what's happening there. So this is so something like that. I think is the right way. Yeah. Anyone else? Wei Chuang?
Ajahn, about the association with true person and untrue person, I think in the Piyajati Sutta, Born of Beloved, there's this guy who lost his son and mourned over it. And I think the Buddha said that sorrow is born from the beloved. Yeah. And then it's hard for him to accept, so he went ahead to ask a group of gamblers, and then they affirm his opinion that joys come from beloved. So, I mean, from this instance, you can see that once you are you are with a group of untrue person, it's very enticing because they kind of affirm your view. And it's very hard to get out from that circle, because the other side is, I mean, the true person will say something that is opposed to your views, but then the one that you associate with will always affirm your view. So how do we get out from that kind of problem?
That's a very good point. I think this is a very, very important point. That's actually the Piyajatika Sutta, Majjhima Nikaya 87, I think it is. And this is one of the things is that the Aryas, they will have your real benefit at heart. They will not be there just to kind of placate you or to make you happy or whatever. They will actually really want to do what is right for you, to help you out. And so we should sometimes expect the Aryas to challenge us a little bit. They are not the people who will always say the right thing, because if you always say the right thing, usually means that you are there to try to make the other person like you or something like that. But the Aryas, they don't care if you like them or not. They are not really, that's not their purpose. Their purpose is to help you and to move you forward on the path. And if you don't like what they say, well, it's actually not their problem, it's your problem. And so you need to look beyond the surface. You need to look at, why are they actually saying this? Okay, I may not like this, but maybe it's true. Maybe they are right. Maybe they're making a good point. And so you need to look at their conduct from a kind of broader perspective. Their conduct is not saying what you like all the time, but it's saying what is kind all the time. That is different. Kindness and what you like may be two different things. Kindness means something that is useful, something that actually moves you forward on the path. And the people who are always kind, well, usually they have some kind of underlying ulterior motive very often, because they're always kind. It's kind of going too far. So yes, so thank you, Wei Chuang. It's a good point.
Ajahn,
yes.
In reality, we associate with people who have our similar kind of interests. How to change that? It's like, oh, you like movies? Okay. You know what I'm trying to say?
I know what you're trying to say.
So how do we get out of that tendency?
But that's okay. You can, I mean, if it is a good habit, it's good to associate with people like that. So if you come to the BGF and these are your friends, great, carry on. Don't change the habit at all. Ask yourself what effect they have on you. Okay, if they like to go on the movies occasionally, it's not such a big deal, depending a little bit on what you watch at the movies, of course. But ask yourself the effect that other people have on you. If they have a bad effect on you, if they make you a worse person, then, of course, you may want to reduce that a little bit. So just ask yourself the effect they have on your mind, and then you will know where you should hang out or not.